Hello, thanks so much for tuning in to our Global Jury Insights panel in partnership with the Gerety Awards. My name is Nicola Kemp and I'm Editorial Director of Creativebrief. This year, Greta Gerwig's iconic film Barbie is the highest grossing domestic release in Warner Brothers history. The Women's World Cup revolutionized a sporting narrative which has been built on women shrinking themselves rather than taking up space. The cultural currency of the female lens is impacting every aspect of creativity and marketing. Yet women are still leaving jobs they love in our industry every single day. So we are hugely grateful to partner with the Gerety Awards to listen and learn from this fantastic panel of global judges. The Gerety Awards are unique because they judge all work, not just work aimed at women through the female lens. And I have some incredible judges from this year's awards with me today. Jo Wallace is Global Executive Creative Director at Media Monks. She is an award-winning creative leader with over 20 years of experience and an ambition to affect positive change through ideas that achieve real impact in the real world. She's also the founder of Good Girls Eat Dinner, a non-profit networking event and also a podcast, which if you don't listen to already, I thoroughly recommend getting it on your playlist. Judith Mota is Chief Creative Officer and Managing Director from VML Y&I Portugal. She's been a copywriter and creative director for most of her professional life. She has a degree in journalism and she also studied classical ballet, but creative departments have been her home for over 20 years. Garda Wally is the creative and co-founder of Wally Studio in Egypt. She was one of the youngest global speakers for TED, and she believes that graphic design can change the world. I must also take a moment to say congratulations to her. She very, very recently gave birth, and she is here puncturing the myth that motherhood is a creative full stop. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And last but not least, I have Zubaida Ghulam, and she is the founder and creative managing partner of Valiant Agency. She is also a mentor. As a member of the IAB SA Transformation Council, she helps with an initiative that aims to provide young Black female creatives across the industry with support. And she is also a creative mind that believes that people buy feelings and not products. So I'm going to kick off by asking you a little bit about how you feel about some of the work that you've seen in the awards, because one of the trends that we've been seeing a lot of at Creativebrief this year is brands really seeking agencies to support them in connecting with culture and that culture point. So to kick off, I'd love to get your view on this, Judith. What was the work that really stood out for you in the judging process?
Two kinds of work, actually. The kind of brands that set up to change something and really do it, not just talk about it in a lovely video case. And I could mention Digital Nation for the government of Tuvalu, or even Coors Light with the cool billboards. This kind of brands that actually do something, don't just talk about doing it. And then the simplicity of great insight plus craft that has had a comeback, and I'm glad it has. Fit Chicks, which is a good example of using humor. Again, something that's been missing for a while. So I really love to see that coming back. And the simplicity of great insight, like the Alzheimer Foundation with the Glitch project, this kind of simplicity, and that I'm really glad to see more of.
I love the focus on closing that brand say-do gap as well. That's really interesting, and those are the great examples there. Jo, I'd love to bring you in here because there's loads of examples there of brilliant marketing in action, whether it's humor or craft or really actually creating something with true purpose. But there's also been a lot of grumbling that perhaps the work hasn't been as good in the wake of the pandemic. Did you feel that when you were doing the judging? Because it feels like there was lots of different work. There was lots of work that I have never seen, lots of different types of ideas. I'd love to get your view on that.
Yeah, I think, as you say, there is still a whole lot of creativity out there. I think we sometimes don't necessarily appreciate the new work until we've had a chance to sort of live with it for a while. And then in retrospect, you think, oh, that was actually amazing. And even at the time, I think, as you say, there is so much creativity being showcased right now. I think, you know, as you mentioned, we went through a pandemic and many other huge events, such as the Ukraine war, a cost of living crisis. I think it would be an easy sort of catch-all to blame the pandemic, or even, you know, the fact people were not necessarily collaborating in person so much. But I think the reality is that if we were going to think about perhaps why work did take a slight drop, and I'm not saying that it did, but let's face it, I mean, clients were perhaps more risk averse, budgets were perhaps smaller, maybe the teams were smaller. And it's also perhaps harder to be really creative when you aren't relaxed. And when the world seems to be going into meltdown, that's possibly a real factor. But for me, I think the creativity has remained really strong.
That's really good to hear. And Zada, I'd love to bring you in here, because there's definitely been a consistent white noise of stress. And we've had a lot of conversations about polycrisis and brands coming out with trend reports about the world being a mess. But through all that, there has been a real red thread of brands seeking to connect more authentically with culture, to really understand who it is they're seeking to connect with. I mean, how did that come through in the work for you?
I think a lot of campaigns have integrated culture amazingly. Like I would like to specifically mention a couple of projects that caught my attention. Like, for example, Dirty Laundry, which discussed the fear of women in the Arab world to speak of rape, like rape victims. They'd rather not speak. And they really integrated this into a very interesting insight, like in a theoretical storytelling approach, which I think is very relatable to the Arab woman. I love this campaign. I think it truly was moving. Also, I think in the health cut, there was a great example of integrating smart solution to combat mosquito bites for babies with a very interesting product that they use in their daily lives. So I thought that this was very smart, of how a simple integration to a daily used product in their rituals, in the Indian ritual, would change and would impact the target to and like promote the usage of this product. Again, and another example, I think the Vencedor paints, they used the pink walls in the city to paint canvases for breast cancer awareness. And this was also like an organic use of how we can use the city, the culture, the ideas to just build on and create works that are smoothly injected into our daily routine. So yeah, I think a lot of projects showed really cool ideas of cultural integration.
I love those ideas of cultural integration and really understanding, you know, a problem, like finding the solution to mosquito bites there for babies. Zubaida, I'd love to bring you in here. What were the trends that stood out for you? And also, what do you think we're going to see more of? Because we've touched on so many things already: craft, humor, and definitely lots of people have talked to me about 2023 still being a year where we're kind of in pandemic mode still, even though we're kind of come out the other end of that. What's your view on that?
So I think just looking at the work overall, what stood out for me was the fact that, most brands are doing more purpose-driven campaigns, and I hope it's not a trend. I hope it's something that really just becomes a habit, where we're not just selling stuff to people, we're making people feel a certain way about brands and about products, That for me was really moving. I mean, some of the panel talked about, the Coors campaign, where we're talking about, heating and cooling for people that don't really have enough economic power to actually do things in their communities, right? I come from South Africa, and South Africa is probably the most divided country when it comes to socio-economic dynamics, right? And the only way that I think we can shift that is by brands actually actively playing a role in changing people's lives. And if we don't do that as brands, and if we don't actively kind of participate in making sure that everything that we do is driven to actually change perspectives, and not just change perspectives, but change people's way of life, I think that we're on a good track. I was most drawn to the campaigns that did this and did it with intention. So that was really important for me to see. And I'm really hoping that it's, like I said, not a trend, and it's something that we take as just marketers and people that create campaigns.
That's really interesting to hear, because definitely I feel like, particularly in the UK market, purpose is treated a bit like it's a trend. Maybe it's a trend that's, some people would argue it's purpose versus profit, but I love your point of view that actually this is a movement in some way rather than a moment. That's really interesting. And I'd love to shift the discussion slightly and get a view from you about the value of looking outwards and the judging process itself, particularly seeing global work when we are in a very fractured world right now. Jo, I'd love to get a view from you. What were the highlights for you, and what do you think is the value in taking that time to really step back and look at what's happening across the globe creatively?
Yeah, I think, it's always an honor to be asked to judge and fully see the work that's coming out from your peers across the globe. And it's really rare, particularly when you get to a more leadership level, to really be immersed in the work fully. So on a purely selfish level, it's just really joyful to kind of spend time with the creative and discussing that creative. It's really inspiring. I think it kind of gives a new found inspiration and sets the bar for what we all want to be achieving. And it's sometimes in the day-to-day, it can become hard sometimes to remember that absolute North Star of award-worthy work. And so it's just really great to do that work justice and take a proper look and discuss it with fellow jurors. And I think the reality is that we all know how difficult it is to get award-worthy work out there. So I just think it's fantastic to have that opportunity to get back to what's really the reason that we are all here as creatives, which is to do sort of groundbreaking, really impactful work.
Thanks, Jo. And Zubaida, I'd love to bring you in here, because there's a really lovely point there in terms of sometimes on the day-to-day we can get a bit disconnected from the work, and I've seen a narrative sometimes about awards culture perhaps stifling creativity, weirdly, or how disconnected people might feel from that if they're working on a campaign where they're not managing to make that difference, perhaps. And particularly when it comes to connecting with culture, what's your view of the value of looking outwards and actually recognizing what brilliant looks like in different markets?
Sure. So I think for me, it's about embracing the inspiration and the knowledge that comes with seeing what is out there, to see what's possible, to kind of break the mold in your head, to see what's possible, to drive different thinking as well. We kind of get stuck in our everyday and the market that we work in, and not kind of bring in different thinking. So we need to understand that we are not the custodians in our own little space only, and you don't know what you don't know, really. So if you embrace what is out there and what other markets and what other people are doing, I mean, that got me thinking when I looked at all of the work that I looked at, just in terms of understanding what the insights are and how the insights came to be, that you need to kind of look out to be able to then kind of draw inspiration from your own self and your kind of creative space as well. So that was really important for me when the judging process took place. Because I think if you're not exposed to things that happen around you externally, you wouldn't be able to kind of gain all of that knowledge to then draw the insights and create amazing work. So that was really important for me. So it's inspiration and knowledge as a whole.
Thank you. And Zada, just building on that theme of inspiration, because it's quite a different judging process, the Gerety, as well, with the all-female judges. Tell us a bit about your experience of judging, and what did it teach you? What surprised you about it?
I think challenging my own beliefs and ideologies sometimes when you see a great piece of work and it challenges your own thinking in some areas of life. This is where it's really groundbreaking. And I think it proves that great work, wherever it comes from, it's universal. Like good work, if it moves you, if it evokes emotion, it really is a universal language. It doesn't have to be like you don't have to speak the same language, understand the same music, understand the lyrics, or understand anything. Like it just gets through you so strongly. So yeah, great work is a universal language, and I think I really enjoyed the diversity, the quality, the originality of the works I've been viewing. It's just such a joyful experience, like Joe said. Like it's really joyful to be overviewing the best of the world. So yes, it's such an honor. And I realized how AI is taking over the world. Like AI entries, like the projects that have been based on AI technologies are now like increasingly like many projects are based on AI. So it's also
that's becoming an interesting trend with AI as well, right? Because the debate around that has become super binary too. So it's creativity versus AI, but actually the work really shows that there is a really creative applications of AI. Do you think that's something that we're going to see more of, and that's going to be a space for creative growth rather than fear?
Depends on how we use it. Like AI should be a tool to enhance your ideas, not to like find your ideas, you know?
Yeah.
Different, it should be an executional tool, not like a conceptual tool, for me, at least.
That's such an interesting point. And Judith, I'd love to bring you in here. It was such a unique experience in terms of bringing so many female creative directors from across the globe together. And there's so many interesting trends happening in the market right now, and shifts, and also the opportunity to perhaps challenge what's possible through seeing great work with different markets. What was your experience? What really stood out for you, and what do you think is the value of really seeing the work through that different lens?
I think, like Hada was saying, great work is universal. So you always judge work and see work from your own perspective, regardless of gender, your experience, your culture. So you always have a lens. And then from the women perspective, I think we're more sensitive to the emotions that work has on us, and we're vocal about it. I don't know how many jurors said, I just cried my life out after seeing this. And this is how I think audiences look at work. So I think women are closer to audiences on this way of feeling the work instead of rationalizing it first. And so this is a great perspective, because I think it's closer to the audiences. What does it make you feel? What emotions does it provoke on you? And this, I felt it was universal, and all women, I'm sure, have this approach first, and then great work is great work everywhere. Either you're a male juror or a female juror, or whatever in between.
Excellent. And I love that point around emotion, because it's such an interesting space, and so interesting in terms of where we are in terms of the creative industries at the moment, and really thinking critically about creating the conditions where creativity can thrive. If you're an introvert, if you're an extrovert, if you're super emotional, if you're not. And one of the trends that I've been seeing this year is something of a bit of a creative crisis of confidence, which is disproportionately impacting women. So I couldn't get this brilliant group together without asking for some real practical advice, because Judy, it's brilliant to discuss the inspiration from the award-winning work, but when time is such a scarce resource, I actually can't remember the last time I've had a conversation with someone which didn't include like a 5-minute segment on the busyness factor. What's your view? How, as an industry, do we create the conditions where creativity can thrive? Because it feels like pace is unsustainable in some spaces.
Yes, everything moves so quickly. I don't think ideas need time. Change needs time, and we should get this time. We should give it to our teams. We should get it from clients. We should give ourselves time. I think it's crucial that we change this, that we don't try to keep up with this change, always changing times we live in. You have to have time to think and rethink, and I think work and the world could profit from this.
It's definitely, time is a real finite resource, and maybe we don't always treat it like it is finite. And Zubida, I'd love to bring you in here, because there is a lot of challenges for people today within the industry, but these awards really show the power of creativity through the female lens. But we know that there is a problem when it comes to retaining female talent, and every year we see another survey with another data point going in the wrong direction. So what is it that we could do differently?
Thank you, Nicola. I think this is a subject that's really close to my heart, because I think as somebody who runs an agency, you always want to retain your staff, and you want people to kind of feel comfortable within their working environments. And coming out of 2020 and coming out of COVID, we know how things kind of changed then as well, you know. Not that it wasn't a problematic before that. I think it just zoned in of the issues within the workplace. So my first thing was just understanding the difficulties that women have to endure on a daily basis, right? And having a level of awareness into what those everyday struggles are and that we're faced with. Because let's be fair, we don't face the same difficulties that our male counterparts do, right? So that's the first thing for me. Second was leadership, right? So I think if we put people in leadership who kind of extend themselves beyond their current situations. So for example, if I have kids, and somebody else doesn't have kids, I understand what those difficulties are. I understand that, you know, because we kind of become comfortable within our environments and within the things that we're exposed to on a daily basis, and not kind of extend that view to people who are dealing with very different things that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So we also just constantly limit ourselves in the areas in which we're able to operate in, right? So put people in leadership who are able to extend themselves beyond that. And then the third thing for me was kind of recognition. So women need to be recognized for the sacrifices that they've made to become fantastic, right? For men, it's easier, isn't it? Because I mean, you can be the bare minimum and be just amazing, right? And for women, we have to, like, I can't explain the amount of sacrifices that we have to make to just become great. So it's about recognizing what that greatness is for females, in the creative space, in a space just generally as well, so that we're able to, I mean, when you get recognized for things, you're able to kind of function better, right? Because everybody kind of understands the space that you're coming with. So for me, it's understanding the difficulties that we operate in. It's leadership, putting people in leadership that understand that, and also just recognition of the things, the sacrifices that we make as women on a daily basis.
Thank you so much. That was such an expansive answer. And I love this idea of people in leadership really stretching to understanding experiences that they perhaps haven't had themselves. Really, really interesting. And Sada, I'd love to bring you in here because your experiences as a creative and as a person just expanded a lot. I'd love to get your point of view. What do you think? I mean, there's so much brilliant work in the Gerety Awards, but the key ingredients for creative excellence are just as much about people as they are about the work, because it's the people that make the work. So what's your point of view here?
I believe that works that achieve creative excellence are works that are really locally relevant, but with a global impact, like with a universal impact. Just I was saying, works that really respect and understand their culture and are culturally driven, however they're universally understood. Works that move you or evoke this emotion or trigger something within you. That are original, have a sense of great originality, a sense of surprise, a shocking factor. All of these are elements that I think achieve creative excellence.
Thank you. And Jo, bringing you in here, all of those ingredients are really lovely and the possibilities are just wonderful, but we are in, and I think we've been using always on as a term for a long, long time now, but how do we really carve out the time, both as individuals and organizations, to really build the culture of creativity and curiosity for everyone? I think we use the words culture and curiosity quite a lot, but just the nuts and bolts of what that really looks like. What's your advice there?
Yeah, it's a difficult balance. Like you say, we're in this kind of always on world. And I think it's about respecting that people need to fill their creative tank. I mean, curiosity is a key word here. You need to be able to take the time to look into other things, to explore and have these moments of inspiration that, you know, no one had an amazing idea sitting at their desk with a ton of pings coming at them. So I think it's really about respecting people's need and also providing culture. You know, we need to build culture and creativity both remotely and in person, because we are in this hybrid world. So it's about building spaces that encourage that inspiration, that self-expression, that creativity, whether that's remotely or in person. I think both are really important, because as much as we are really benefiting from this seamless ability to connect across the globe and to have talent in different pockets of the world, we've got to respect that that also means that not everybody is going to be able to be in an in-person situation. So it's really key that we build that. And I think, like any relationship, it takes effort, but obviously as a creative leader, it's really key that we empower this greater creativity. So whether that's a weekly lunch in person that allows people to catch up and have conversations that spark something because they happen to talk about something they've seen, or whether it's a remote inspiration session that's also quite social, it's just really important that we have these pillars in place to make sure that we are building that, because at the end of the day, that's what will separate organizations from one another, is how we connect with each other.
I really love that point of view. I was thinking as you were talking of the Creative Equals research that shows only 6% of creatives had their best idea sat at their desk in the office. Really interesting to think more expansively about how and why and where people fill their creative tank. Thank you. We're coming to the end of our discussion now. We've had a whistle-stop tour of the work, so thank you very much for that. But I really wanted to pick your brains on a trend that we're seeing a lot more of in terms of creative industries and broader culture as well, in terms of this real focus on making. And, you know, all the work that you've looked at is all work that has been made and made it out into the world, which we all know isn't always easy. So I just wanted to ask you all, what do you think? What's the one thing that the industry needs more of in the coming months? So Judith, I'd love to put you on the spot first.
I think more diversity will bring better work. Also, I'd love to see more humor. We have to have fun again, and I hope the world changes and give a space to have more fun again.
I love those. Thank you very much. And Zubeida, what would be your things that you'd like to see more of?
I love what Judith said about humor, because as human beings, I think we all connect on a humorous level, right? So the Skittles campaign was really something that stood out for me when I looked at all of the work. But I think over and above that, I feel like, so I'm currently working in a different market than the one that I'm used to. And I'm finding similar kind of issues when it comes to understanding the youth, right? I don't think a lot of brands understand the youth and understand what's happening in the world of the youth. We kind of just guess it a lot of the time. So seeing a lot of more work that is almost diverted to the youth, and because they're the ones that are going to take over from us. I'm not young anymore, but I know that I'd like to hear the perspective of what the youngsters are thinking and feeling. They're probably the most misunderstood out of all of the audiences, just because we can't really relate to them. So to see a little bit more of work that's directed to the youth, for me, is going to be really important to see.
That's such a great thing to think of. Thank you so much. I think we've all seen quite a lot of stereotyping of young people. So that's a really interesting point. Thank you. And Sada, bringing you in here, what would you like to see more of this year?
More of working moms, creatives, more of mothers, more of women in the creative field, of course. It's such a struggle, and I think this needs to be like addressed, or like SOS anyone.
I think that is
I think more of storytelling. I really appreciate the element of storytelling, and I think this could be acknowledged more.
I think you can link the two things together. I think you showing up like this today, so soon after giving birth, you're telling the story so powerfully about why motherhood isn't a creative full stop. So thank you. And Joe, I'd love to bring you in here. What would you like to see more of?
Yeah, I think everything that's been said is so excellent. So I would echo all of that. I think, yes, you know, understanding the younger market is always really key. But I think just to flip that, I think we also have a massive lack of older, the understanding of the older market. We don't see it. We don't explore it. I mean, I'm heading towards 50. I'm on the wrong side of 45 if you want to look at it that way, but I believe I'm on the right side, because life is really just getting better. Why don't we see women and men that are enjoying their life? At the end of the day, they have some disposable income, hopefully. So it's kind of strange that we don't necessarily speak to them. But yes, greater representation overall, which will come from having more diverse perspectives within the people doing the work. So whether that's across LGBTQI+, whether that's older, younger, different ethnicities, different perspectives, different backgrounds, I think it's just really important that we start to broaden further the work that's already begun to take place.
That's such a great example, and that will only broaden the work more as well. Hopefully we'll be the last generation that grew up with a narrative that we should fight the signs of aging, which seems like a fight we would never win nor want to fight in the first place. Thank you everyone for joining us today and for tuning in. It was such a great discussion with so many things to think about. But I just want to thank everyone for sharing their time today. As Judith said, ideas need time, and we all need time to discuss the work and challenge each other so we can think differently. Thank you so much to the Gerety Awards for partnering with us, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.